What do you do when your family has always dismissed your dreams, only for them to come knocking when they need something from you? Ava's journey from an unnoticed daughter to a successful business owner has been full of struggles, but when her parents reach out for help after years of silence, will she give them what they ask for? Stay tuned to see how Ava takes control of her destiny, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories of strength, resilience, and triumph. My name is Ava, and from the moment I was born, I always felt like the odd one out in my family. My dad had been hoping for a son, and when the doctor announced, "It's a girl," I saw the disappointment in his eyes. That moment shaped so much of my relationship with him. My older sister Emily was the golden child. Smart, talented, and seemingly perfect in my parents' eyes, she could do no wrong. It was always about her achievements. "Did you hear Joy got another A in math?" Or, "Look at Emily's painting, it's beautiful." And there I was, just existing, quietly fading into the background. My report cards barely earned a reaction, and my drawings were often tossed aside. As I got older, I learned to fend for myself. I packed my own lunches, did my laundry, and figured out my homework without anyone's help. It wasn't easy, but it made me independent, strong, even if I felt invisible at times. Then, one day, when I was about 15, something unexpected happened that would change everything. I was hungry after school, and since no one was home to make a snack, I decided to try baking cookies. I followed a recipe from one of Mom's old cookbooks, and to my surprise, they turned out really good. The next day at school, I brought some cookies to share. Sophie, a classmate, tried one and her eyes lit up. "Ava, these are amazing! Did your mom make them?" she asked. "No," I said, smiling proudly. "I made them." Word spread quickly, and soon kids were asking me to bake more. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, like I was good at something, like I had found a way to stand out. I was finally getting noticed, not for being Emily's sister, but for being Ava, the girl who could bake. Excited, I rushed home to tell my parents. "Mom, Dad, guess what? I made cookies and everyone at school loved them." Mom barely looked up from her magazine. "That's nice, dear. Just make sure you clean up the kitchen." Dad frowned. "Cookies, Ava? You should focus on your studies, not waste time in the kitchen." I felt a pang in my chest, but I wasn't about to let their dismissive reactions kill my excitement. I had found something I loved, and I wasn't going to let them hold me back. The gap between Emily and me only widened over time. Emily finished high school with top grades and was accepted into a prestigious college. Our parents celebrated like they had just won the lottery. Meanwhile, I struggled through high school with decent but not spectacular grades. But there was one thing I was sure of: I had found my passion. Every weekend, I baked cakes, pies, and cookies. Soon, even our neighbors started ordering from me. I had turned my love for baking into a small business. One afternoon, Mrs. Megan from next door took a bite of my chocolate cake and said, "Ava, honey, this is incredible. You have real talent." I beamed with pride. "Thanks. I'm thinking of going to culinary school after graduation," I told her. Her eyes sparkled. "Oh, that's wonderful. You'd do so well." But when I shared my dream with my parents, their reactions were far from encouraging. Mom's face fell. "Culinary school? But that's just cooking." Dad's reaction was worse. He slammed his fist on the table. "Absolutely not! No daughter of mine is going to waste her life in a kitchen." "But Dad," I said, trying to explain. "I'm good at it. People love my baking." He scoffed. "So what? You think you can make a living flipping burgers or decorating cakes? Wake up, Ava. The real world doesn't work like that." The words stung, but deep down, I knew what I wanted. Cooking was more than just a hobby. It was something I was good at, something that made me feel alive. And no matter what my parents said, I wasn't going to give up on my dream. Mom added softly, but just as dismissively, "Honey, you need to think about your future. Look at Emily. She's studying finance. She'll have a real career." Their words hurt, but I wasn't ready to give up. I started selling my baked goods at school events and to my classmates. The response was amazing. "Ava, these cookies are incredible," my friend Ethan said with his mouth full of a chocolate chip cookie. You should open a bakery or something." I smiled as I imagined it, my own little bakery filled with the smell of fresh bread and pastries. It felt like a dream, but at home, that dream quickly became a nightmare. One day, Dad found a flyer for my bake sale. "What's this?" he demanded. I swallowed nervously. "It's for school. We're raising money for new computers." He glared at me. "Don't lie to me, Ava. I know you've been selling your treats. This stops now. You need to focus on real studies, not this hobby." "But, Dad, I'm making good money," I said. "Money?" he snapped. "You call a few dollars for cookie money money? Do you know how much your sister makes at her internship? That's real money. That's a real future." I bit my lip, trying not to cry. "I just thought—" He cut me off. "No, you didn't think. Listen carefully. This baking nonsense ends now. You're going to get your grades up and apply to real colleges. If I hear about one more cake or cookie, we'll cut you off. No more college fund, no more support. Got it?" That night, I cried myself to sleep. My dream of culinary school crumbled like an overcooked cookie. The next day, I started looking up business colleges. My heart felt heavy, but I was determined. Somehow, someday, I'd find a way to follow my passion, but for now, I had to play by their rules. College passed in a blur of numbers, spreadsheets, and financial reports. I worked hard on my accounting studies, trying to convince myself it was the right choice. But every time I walked past a bakery or smelled fresh bread, my heart ached for the dream I had left behind. After I got my degree, I landed a job at a big company. My parents were so happy. I rented a small apartment, determined to live on my own. But day after day, as I sat at my desk working on numbers and reports, I felt myself slowly fading inside. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I pulled out my old recipe book, its pages worn and stained from happier times. I decided to bake a batch of cupcakes, losing myself in the process of mixing and baking. The next day, I brought them to work. The reaction was immediate. "Oh my God, Ava, these are amazing," my coworker Sophia said. "Where did you buy them?" I hesitated, then said, "Actually, I made them." Words spread fast, and soon people started asking if I could bake cakes for birthdays, kids' parties, and even weddings. At first, I took a few orders on the weekends, but soon I was spending all my free time in the kitchen. My little apartment was always filled with the smell of vanilla and chocolate. Then a big opportunity came. My company's anniversary was coming up, and the director approached me. "Ava, I hear you're a great baker. How would you feel about making the cake for our anniversary party?" My heart raced. This was a huge chance, but also a big risk. Still, I couldn't say no. On the day of the party, I brought in a huge cake decorated with the company's logo and detailed sugar flowers. When I unveiled it, the room went silent. Then the director grinned and said, "This is incredible! Everyone, give it up for Ava, our accounting wizard and apparently master pastry chef." The room filled with applause. The director even hugged me and whispered, "You're wasted in accounting, Ava. This is your true calling." His words stuck with me. As more cake orders came in, I knew I had to make a choice. I was juggling 2 full-time jobs, accountant by day, baker by night. Something had to change. One sleepless night, covered in flour and surrounded by cake orders, I made my decision. The next day, I handed in my resignation. My supervisor was shocked. "But why? You're one of our best employees," she said. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. "I found my true passion," I said simply. I rented a small commercial kitchen and threw myself into my new business, diving headfirst into the excitement and fear of it all. Some nights I worked until the early hours, filling orders, while other days I questioned whether I'd made a huge mistake. But slowly, little by little, my bakery grew. I hired my first employee, then my second. We moved to a bigger space, and before long, my cakes and pastries were becoming well known across the city. I kept it a secret from my parents. As far as they knew, I was still an accountant, climbing the corporate ladder like they expected. I kept telling myself that I was waiting for the right time to tell them the truth, but deep down, I was terrified of their disappointment, their anger, and their rejection. As the bakery gained traction, I knew I had to push even harder. I delved into modern marketing, determined to make my shop stand out. I set up social media pages and posted pictures of my cakes, cookies, and pastries every day. But there was one thing I avoided showing myself. No selfies, no pictures of me as the baker, just my treats. Despite my nerves, the business was flourishing. I teamed up with a local delivery service to reach more customers around the city. I even launched a loyalty program offering discounts to returning customers. Then, one day, I had a big idea. Sweet Tooth Wednesdays. Once a month, we opened our doors and gave away free samples to anyone who walked in. The first time, I was a bundle of nerves. What if no one comes? I fretted out loud to my employee, Madison. She gave me an exasperated look and replied, "Boss, have you tasted your own stuff? People will be lining up." She was right. By noon, the line stretched down the street. Watching people enjoy my treats brought me a joy I never expected. Our bakery became more popular than ever. We started catering for fancy events, supplying desserts to top restaurants, and even shipping my famous cookies across the country. With success came money more than I ever thought I could make just from baking. It was even more than my sister Emily, who worked at a bank, had joked about. I started helping my parents financially, though I pretended it was still from my accounting job. When their roof needed repairs, I paid for it. When they talked about their dream vacation to Europe, I surprised them with tickets. "Oh, Ava, you shouldn't have," Mom would say, but I could see the excitement shining in her eyes. While I was building my business and supporting our parents, Emily was living her best life. She still lived at home, spending her paycheck on designer clothes, gadgets, and self-care. But to our parents, it didn't matter. To them, Emily was still the shining star. "Did you hear about Joy's promotion?" Mom would say proudly. "Vice president at only 31. I forced a smile. "That's great, Emily. Congrats." But it didn't matter how much I accomplished. Running a successful bakery, employing a dozen people, and making hundreds of customers happy every day, it was as if none of it mattered at home. One day at Sweet Dreams Bakery, everything started like normal. I was in the kitchen adding the final touches to a wedding cake when Madison ran in waving an order form. "Boss, you're not going to believe this," she said, eyes wide. I wiped my hands on my apron. "What's up?" "We just got an order for a birthday cake. The delivery address is—" She paused for effect. "Your parents' house." It felt like a splash of cold water. "Are you sure?" I asked. She nodded and handed me the form. There it was. My childhood address, my mom's name, and a note saying it was for her birthday. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. But then an idea formed in my mind. "Madison," I said, trying to sound calm even though my heart was racing. "Clear my schedule. This cake is going to be my masterpiece." For the next week, I put everything into that cake. 3 tiers of Mom's favorite flavors, decorated with hand-piped flowers and delicate sugar designs. It was the best cake I had ever made. As I worked, I pictured the moment. My parents' amazement when they saw the cake, their pride when I told them I made it, and the happiness of finally showing them who I really was. The day of the party arrived. I showed up early with a small gift to keep up the act. The house was full of relatives I hadn't seen in years. "Ava!" Aunt Janice hugged me. "Look at you, all grown up, still crunching numbers." I forced a smile, the usual lie sitting heavy in my throat. "Yep, still at it. Son, I couldn't wait for my cake to arrive." Then the doorbell rang. Mom answered it, and there was our delivery guy holding the familiar Sweet Dreams bakery box. "Special delivery for the birthday girl," he said cheerfully. The room went silent as Mom carried the box to the dining table. She lifted the lid, and everyone gasped. Murmurs of appreciation filled the room as they admired the cake. I stood there, heart pounding, waiting for the right moment to speak. Before I could say anything, Dad cleared his throat. "Before we celebrate," he said in a serious voice, "there's something we need to talk about." The room went silent. Everyone turned to my parents, their faces full of disgust. "We recently found out something," Mom said coldly. "A secret that was kept from us." The tension in the room was unbearable. I felt frozen as Dad spoke again, his voice full of anger. "Can you believe it? He looked around, pointing straight at me. Our Ava has been lying to us this whole time. She's not an accountant. She's a pastry chef. He said it like it was the worst thing in the world. I opened my mouth to explain, but no words came out. This couldn't be happening. Dad's face turned red with anger. We always dreamed our daughters would be successful, respected. Look at Emily, vice president at her age. That's something to be proud of. Emily looked uncomfortable. She avoided my eyes. But you, Mom said, staring at me. We gave you everything, every chance, and this is how you repay us? By becoming an ordinary cook. That word, ordinary, hurt more than I ever imagined. Didn't they see what I had built? Didn't they understand? Suddenly, Dad walked over to the table where my cake sat. Before I could react, he flipped the box over. My beautiful cake, my masterpiece, crashed to the floor in a mess of icing and sponge. The guests gasped. We're not eating this, Dad sneered. It's beneath us. Mom nodded in agreement. Ava, you don't belong with respectable people. You've disobeyed us for the last time. Then Dad said the words that felt like a punch to my chest. We disown you. You are no longer our daughter. I couldn't breathe. This couldn't be real. I looked around, hoping someone, anyone, would stand up for me, but no one did. Even Aunt Janice, who had hugged me earlier, whispered to Uncle David, I always knew she was trouble. Others nodded in agreement. The room, which had been full of joy just moments ago, now felt cold and unwelcoming. Leave, Mom said, her voice like ice. Leave now and never contact us again. I stood there frozen, tears running down my face. How could they do this? How could they throw me away like I was nothing? Everything I had done, everything I had become, it felt so unfair. Didn't you hear your mother? Dad shouted. Get out! Somehow, I found the strength to move. I turned and walked toward the door, my eyes filled with tears. As I reached for the handle, I heard Emily's voice, soft and hesitant. Mom, Dad, maybe we should... But before she could finish, the door closed behind me. I stumbled down the front steps, the same steps I had climbed so many times as a child, but now they felt cold and unwelcoming. I reached my car, and that's when the sobs hit me. Sitting there, I felt like my whole world had crumbled. My dream that my parents would one day accept me had shattered just like my cake on their dining room floor. I don't know how long I cried, but by the time the sun started setting, casting long shadows over the neighborhood I grew up in, I knew one thing for sure. I could never come back here again. The days after that party passed in a blur. I moved like a ghost, barely eating, hardly sleeping. The bakery kept running thanks to my amazing staff, but I was just going through the motions. Slowly, as the shock faded, I threw myself into my work with new energy. If my family couldn't appreciate my passion, I would show the world how great ordinary cooks could be. The bakery thrived. We expanded to a second location, then a third. Magazines wrote about us. I appeared on TV and even got a cookbook deal. Success came in waves, and I rode each one with determination. I bought a beautiful apartment, my own little safe place in the city. Years after my family disowned me, I met Paul. He was kind, supportive, and loved my cakes more than anything. A year later, when he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was small but perfect. As I looked around at the smiling faces of my friends and the family I had chosen, I realized something. I didn't miss my blood relatives at all. These people, my employees, my friends, my husband, were my real family now. Life settled into a happy routine. The bakery continued to grow, and Paul and I built a wonderful life together. I had everything I ever wanted, except maybe closure. That changed on a Sunday afternoon, 5 years after that awful birthday party. I was in my office looking over plans for our new bakery location when my phone rang. The number wasn't one I knew, but something made me answer. Hello? I said. Ava, it's Mom. My mother's voice hesitant but clear. Please don't hang up. We need to talk. Then she told me everything. The bank where Emily worked had lost its license. There were huge layoffs, and Emily had been out of work for months. They needed help. Before I could even process it, I heard my father's voice jump in. "You need to give Emily a job at your bakery," he said. "As the director. Emily has real business experience. She should run things. You can just be one of the bakers." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After 5 years of silence, this was why they were reaching out? A cold laugh escaped me. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You disowned me, threw me out, and now you want me to hand over my business to Emily?" "We gave you life," Dad shouted. "We raised you. You owe us something." Something inside me snapped. All the pain, all the anger I had buried for years came rushing out. "I owe you nothing," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You made your choice 5 years ago. I'm not your daughter, remember? I'm just an ordinary cook beneath you." I took a deep breath. "I won't be helping you or Emily. Goodbye." I hung up, my hand shaking slightly. For a moment, I just sat there letting it all sink in. Then slowly, a smile spread across my face. I felt lighter, like a weight I didn't even realize I had been carrying was finally gone. I owed them nothing. I was free. Just when I thought my family drama was over, life surprised me again. One quiet Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. I looked at the screen. Emily's number. I hadn't seen it in years. Feeling both curious and nervous, I answered. "Hello?" I said. "Ava?" Joy's voice was soft and unsure. "I hope it's okay that I'm calling." I took a deep breath. "It's okay, Emily. What's going on?" What happened next was a conversation that shifted everything between Emily and me. She apologized profusely for how our parents had treated me, both recently and years ago. "I had no idea they asked you for a job," she said, her voice trembling. "I would never have done that. I'm so sorry, Ava." I felt something inside me soften. "Thank you, Emily. That really means a lot," I said, my voice more fragile than I expected. She continued, explaining how losing her job had been a wake-up call. "It made me realize I was living someone else's dream," she confessed. "Banking, finance. It was never really my passion. It was always Mom and Dad's dream for me, not mine." I listened, barely breathing, as Emily poured out her heart. "Watching you follow your passion and build this incredible business, it inspired me so much, Ava," she added. "I've decided to make a change. I've signed up for interior design courses. I want to create beautiful spaces and finally be true to myself, just like you have." I could feel the warmth in my chest and tears welled up in my eyes. For so long, I thought Emily had everything figured out. I never imagined she was struggling too. "That's amazing, Emily," I said, my voice shaky with emotion. "I'm really happy for you." There was a moment of silence before Emily spoke again, her voice full of emotion. "I'm proud of you, Ava. You stood up for yourself, you followed your dreams, and now you're living the life you've always wanted. That's incredible." Sim, the dam broke then, and I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. The years of hurt, anger, and love I'd carried inside me poured out. We talked for hours, catching up on all the lost time, sharing our dreams, fears, and everything in between. Before we hung up, Emily paused, then said, Maybe we could meet up sometime? Just to talk, to support each other." I found myself nodding, even though she couldn't see me. "I'd love that, Emily. I really would." Thus, over the next few months, Emily and I began meeting regularly. We sipped coffee, indulged in pastries from my bakery, and shared memories of our childhood. We cheered each other on through the highs and lows of our new careers. Emily's interior design business was growing rapidly, and I couldn't have been prouder of her. As for our parents, we heard rumors that they had disowned Emily when she left banking. They told anyone who would listen that their daughters had disappointed them. One was now a simple cook, the other a foolish decorator. But Emily and I knew the truth. We weren't failures. We were following our dreams, building successful careers, and doing what we loved. We had carved out our own paths to happiness. One day, during one of our regular meetups at my bakery, Emily glanced around at the bustling shop, then turned to me with a grin. "You know," she said, "I think we turned out pretty great, all things considered." I laughed, feeling warmth spread through me. "Yeah, I agreed. I think we did. As I watched Emily sketch design ideas on a napkin, surrounded by the sweet aroma of pastries and the cheerful hum of customers, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. This was my life, messy, challenging, but sweet. Sweet because I had fought for my dreams. I'd lost some battles along the way, but in the end, I had won the war. How do you rebuild after years of rejection and silence from the people you once hoped would support you? How do you find peace when your dreams have been dismissed, but you refuse to let go? For Ava, the journey to peace was a long and painful one. For years, her family's rejection felt like a weight she couldn't shake. Her parents, especially her father, had always pushed her to follow a path they approved of, dismissing her passion for baking as a mere hobby. When they disowned her, it seemed like the final nail in the coffin of her family relationships. But through it all, Ava found strength in herself, strength that led her to open Sweet Dreams Bakery, where she turned her love for baking into a thriving business. But despite her success, Ava kept her achievements hidden from her family. She had made it without them, but the pain of their rejection still lingered. It wasn't until her parents came knocking, expecting her to help their daughter after her financial failure, that Ava's resolve truly solidified. The audacity of their request shattered the last of her illusions. And yet, in the midst of her anger, Ava found a moment of unexpected grace. Emily, her estranged sister, reached out, apologizing, opening up about her own struggles, and admitting that Ava had inspired her to follow her passion. It was in this moment that Ava realized she had never been alone. She had been living her dream, and her sister, despite everything, had been watching and learning from her all along. With Emily's apology and newfound path, Ava finally felt the healing she had been denying herself. Together, they rebuilt their relationship, supporting each other through the ups and downs of their own dreams. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for the first time in years, Ava allowed herself to feel truly proud of the life she had built not just for herself, but for the people who now believed in her. What about you? How would you have handled the situation with Ava's parents? Do you believe that sometimes we have to choose our own happiness, even if it means walking away from family? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more stories of resilience and hope.